Okay, welcome back everyone. So this is the demonstration portion of this week's assignment. As I said previously in the materials section, materials video, I've just drawn this out very quickly, very loosely, and very lightly in graphite with my mechanical pencil. So that's going to be our first approach to the charcoal drawing. The second approach, as I said, will be pretty much with just charcoal itself, working on a tone ground and then going in with a charcoal stick to do our drawing. But for this I've just drawn it out very roughly in graphite. Now you don't want to go too heavy with the graphite because it will repel charcoal if it's put down too thickly, so I might want to go in and just tap out a little bit here just to soften and lighten this graphite, and where I may have pressed a bit too hard and laid it down a bit too thick in places, I can just remove some of that graphite with my putty rubber. Okay, so I'm just tapping out with that. Right, now with our charcoal, I'm going to go in with the charcoal pencil to begin with, just to define some of the darker areas of the drawing that I know are going to be dark. So the eyes, the nostrils, the line of the lips here, I'm going to go in with a charcoal pencil, so that's down, and even if I kind of smudge it slightly, it will still remain in place. So at least I have that part of the drawing locked in from an early stage. Then I'll start building up with the willow charcoal and all our values. So I'm going to go in with this. You can see obviously I've sharpened this to a very fine point, my charcoal pencil now, which was done. You can't sharpen charcoal pencils with a traditional pencil sharpener because the lead is so soft it would just break. So charcoal pencils do have to be sharpened with a knife. The danger with using a knife is that you press into the lead and the wood and you can break that lead. So I will do a video demonstrating how to sharpen charcoal pencils in this manner, and the safest and best way of doing it, and that's by using a single edge razor blade, and there is a very specific technique and process to doing this. So we sharpen with the razor blade and then finish off with a bit of sandpaper, just bring it to a nice point. But I haven't used the sandpaper for this because I couldn't find any. So I'm just going to go in now, and I'm just using this charcoal pencil just to, as I said, just establish some of my main shapes, darker shapes, and where they are. So I've got that locked in and down. So you don't want to go too black here, you don't want to press too hard. This is just really to just redefine your drawing in the places that you know are going to be darker and where you want that bit more detail and sharpness. So obviously the eyes in the portrait are probably our most important element, being the windows to the soul, as they are. Okay, so I'm just, again, not pressing too hard, just going over some of these lines with the pencil. I'm going to put a little bit of value in here for the brow. It's practically black. And then we'll go over to this eye. This side of the face is pretty much all in shadow. But again, I still want to kind of define the bigger, larger, more important shapes of the eye. So I'm going to try, I would probably spend a long time, if this was a commissioned portrait I'd spend a long time. Really going to be a lot more careful with what I'm doing here. But again, just for the sake of speed and not keeping you all too long, and so you can just jump straight in and hopefully follow along and get working. I am speeding this process up slightly. So the nostril, as I mentioned, here, this nostril here, and then the line of the lips, which is the center line of the lips. They're slightly open here, so we're going to have a bit of a dark shadow in there. Come down to this corner down here, around here. Okay, so that's pretty much that. I mean, I can go in, this side of the face is in shadow, so I can just go in very lightly, not applying very much pressure at all here, just to, forgot that brow, just pop that brow in. So it's rather windy today, and I always have my windows wide open in my studio for ventilation. So yeah, excuse any noise coming from that window. So I'm just going down, just establishing some of the major contour here. Okay, so that's probably enough. I've got enough now defined there, like I say, of the most important features. So if I do smudge across, you can see it's still going to remain in place and intact. So that's what we're looking for there. So now I'm going to switch to the Willow charcoal, which is beneath here, I believe. Okay, so I'm going to put the charcoal down now, just using each side, not applying too much pressure at all here. I just want to cover pretty much my entire area of the face, so I'm not worried about going over the highlights here, because I will erase these out after I've just softened this off afterwards with some tissue paper. So you want to be very light-handed with this, don't be too heavy-handed, otherwise you're going to kind of gouge that mark into the paper, and it's going to be very resistant then afterwards to rubbing out with your eraser. Okay, so bring this up into the hair as well. Probably won't do the entire face for this example, and we'll just do maybe a section of the face. So again, just to keep that length of time of the video down somewhat. So now I've got my tissue paper. I'm just going to go in, just very softly, just rub the surface, just a bit of circular motion here. I'm just creating a very pale flat value. Okay, so you can see there's some kind of those marks still there, still remaining. That's because, as I said, the paper towel is a bit too stiff and abrasive, so it doesn't soften as well as a nice soft brushwood or a chamois leather, but it should be okay for our purposes. So I'm just going to go in now with my putty rubber and just lift out some of the light areas of the portrait, so the highlight on the nose. So this is kind of almost like if we were using white paint here. So our rubber is our white paint. anything, I probably softened off my pencil underdrawing a bit too much here, so I actually have lost a lot of that pencil underdrawing, which is not ideal. But again, the way we're going to work with the second one is very much kind of a more painterly way of working, where we're not relying too much on an underdrawing. So this is kind of somewhere in between the two at the moment. I would normally like to see a bit more of my pencil drawing underneath showing through at this stage. That's okay. You see, I'm just using the putty rubber. I keep kneading it, pushing it into like a sharpened knife edge where I want finer lines. Okay, so you can see already it starts to, we just have that very light general value down with a few darks in there that we established initially, and then just pulling out a few highlights. It does start taking some form and some shape at this very early stage. It's a very important highlight on the cheek there, so I'm going to go in now with a plastic eraser just here, because I do want to try to remove as much of that as I can, because it's a very bright white highlight right on that corner of the cheek there. Comes down here and just softens off slightly. Got a little bit of light around here. Okay, so I think that's okay just for a few initial marks. Let's just pull out that highlight in the eye a little bit. So that's okay just for a few initial lights to describe just the general placement of those lights. Alright, so back in with the charcoal pencil. I'm just going to, again, just go back in now and try to find a few more areas that I actually missed with the pencil here. You know, I can just refine my major shapes and edges here a little bit. Again, not with too much pressure, just quite a light pressure here. So don't use your finger, but I just have, so generally don't. I'm kind of a bit restricted in my work surface at the moment. I do have to come up with a better solution for this, because I have my laptop on my drawing board, the iPad that I'm working from, and then this very small area is working, so it's very difficult. So I do need to have some way of kind of moving my laptop off the drawing board with a hostess trolley or some other kind of table, flat table surface. But we will have to make do for the time being until I manage to get out and about and source one of those. see here, I softened off that graphite way too much here, so my ear has pretty much been obliterated entirely, which is not ideal. So do go a little bit heavier with your pencil than I have here. Okay. Check to see where that ear comes up. So I'm just going to have to redraw the ear now slightly. Just I'm not going to, as I say, I'm not going to do the entire picture here, so I probably won't get to doing the ear. I'll probably just work around this area of the face here, so you can see the process, this first process. Okay, so that's probably okay now for the charcoal pencil. I'm going to switch back to the willow charcoal again now. And now with the willow, because I know I can really lift it out very easily, as opposed to the charcoal pencil, which is our blend of compressed charcoal. With the willow charcoal now, I can go in and start just really pushing in some dark areas. I'm not applying too much pressure again. You don't want to be applying heavy pressure here. It's kind of like a light to medium pressure, but just enough to get kind of that value that I'm after here. Okay, so I'm just working down, as we have done in the previous graphite process, just working down on the shadow side now, trying to establish the shadow side of the face. Chin's a little bit low. I'll lift that up a little bit. So just lifted the chin slightly there. Might have been a bit low. So yeah, I'm just getting this shadow side in, and then I can obviously go much darker up in the hair here. Be a bit more expressive with my strokes at this early stage. I can be a bit more accurate with those strokes a bit later when I go in with the pencil again to do my final later details. So this is, I believe this is a medium stick, which is a little, they will vary in thicknesses because they're obviously just sticks of burnt wood effectively. So they're not all going to be consistently the same thickness out of a box, but the medium one here, this does seem a bit thick. So again, it wouldn't be the choice I would use for something as detailed and as fine as this. I'd be using thinner sticks at this stage. But again, I'm just using what I have to hand. You can see I'm not too worried about kind of the edges or the shapes or how I'm putting this charcoal down, because it's all going to be very softly blended in a moment. Okay, I'm just going to go back in. I'm going to use a brush now actually, just to soften some of this charcoal and the edges. So just the same as we're doing with the watercolour, softening my edges here. I can pull this value over. So I'm painting now with the charcoal that I've laid down pretty much. And this is now at this stage is where I'd be a bit more conscious of the direction of the stroke of the brush I'm using here now, trying to follow the shape and form of the plane that I'm rendering here. Oh, it's a bit too heavy, that stroke there, so I try to lift as much of that out as I can. Actually, I can see this taking a bit longer than I'd anticipated, just even to do a smaller area. So I think we might cover the other approach to charcoal drawing in a later assignment. I'll probably do another painting one for next week, and then we'll just switch between painting and alternate between painting and drawing from week to week, so that we're keeping up on both of those disciplines, because obviously drawing is very, very important. It's essential to good painting is good drawing, really. See, gradually it just starts taking shape. I'm really not able to get to this because of my iPad being here. It's right on the edge of my desk. All of this side of the desk here is taken up by a rather large 17-inch laptop, so yeah, that is something I will definitely be looking at sorting out over the next few weeks. Okay, so again, the stroke with the brush, just coming down following that form of the forehead, so it comes down and around here. Okay, so it's either going to be going around this way or down and around this way. I generally like to work vertically down, over and around a form, down, vertically down through forms. There are areas like this lower lid here where I'd work over and around because it makes more sense to, but certainly larger areas I want to be working down and around the form. I'm just softening this edge off. This actually comes in quite a bit darker here. So the transition there, this darker value comes way out to about here where our sternomastoid muscle comes down. See that bottom bit there? Oh dear. I'm just going to have a bit of a readjust here. My paper's stuck under my laptop. Right. Sorry folks, give me 2 minutes. I'm going to have to lift this laptop up. Okay. You can see now, because the paper's a smooth surface, I'm not really able to go much darker now with my charcoal at this stage. So that's where I'm going to need that charcoal pencil now, after I've just laid in these initial shadow values, to really start shaping up everything I've got down so far and going a little bit darker and a bit more controlled with what I put on. Now there is something I didn't mention, which I will be using throughout the process of the drawing, and that is something called fixative. So when I'm happy that everything's where it needs to be and I don't need to soften or modify any particular areas any further, I'll go in with the fixative just to fix everything into place. And then that will allow me then to, it will kind of rejuvenate and revive the work surface for any further applications of the softer willow charcoal. So I can go back and it will give me a slight kind of tooth and abrasion with that fixative on top to be able to kind of go in and it will hold my charcoal a bit better at the moment, because as I said, the paper is quite smooth. The charcoal now is just kind of slipping around a little bit. The willow charcoal, that is. So I will switch now to my charcoal pencil after I've just pop a few values down here. So you don't want to be too detailed and too finished with your charcoal drawings. I think certain areas can benefit from a slightly more finished treatment, like our focal point in the face, but other areas like the clothing and the hair, oh sorry, it's charcoal breaking, you can be a bit more expressive with how you put that on. Sorry, this laptop is really annoying me. There we are. So you can see I'm just being a bit more expressive just with the strokes here, slightly more abstract. And again, I would do the same thing with the hair. We can kind of just be a bit more expressive in the strokes in the hair. Okay, so that's an okay first pass on the shadows. Make sure, same with the watercolour, I'm keeping everything very soft at this stage, because I want to control where I then place my hard edges, because those hard edges are going to create focal points and areas of interest that will attract the viewer's attention. So let me just soften this off a little bit. Almost ready to switch back to the charcoal pencil. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to go back to my charcoal pencil now. Okay, so now I can go back in now, start. Remember, you can soften this charcoal pencil off again to a certain degree with your blending tools, but try to kind of do this the same way as you would with your pencil. Just vary your pressure just to get some different values as best you can without over relying on just softening it all off with blending implements afterwards. So because this is a 4B, obviously it's quite a dark value. They do come in different grades, as I mentioned, so if I were doing this as a commission, I would be using HB charcoal pencils to start with, and then moving on to my much softer charcoal pencils. But because this is more a kind of like a sketch almost, rather than a finished drawing, I'm just going straight in with that 4B, which will give me a good range of values. So yeah, so with the willow charcoal, when I put the first values down, you can see I wasn't too concerned about the directions of my strokes, but now I am following with the charcoal pencil, following the form a bit more. It's always a good idea to rest a sheet of clean white paper down on the area that your hand's pressing on, because as you can see, I'm getting covered in charcoal here. So that's one thing a lot of people don't particularly like about charcoal, is it can be very messy. But if you take the right precautions beforehand and have a little sheet of clean paper down there, you can reduce you smudging that area and also getting charcoal all over your body and hands, and pretty much potentially all over your house as well, which has happened to me many times. Paint everywhere and also charcoal everywhere. Not ideal. Hopefully you can see this taking shape. I have a sense that I'm taking a long time again. I do want to try to remedy that as best I can but give you enough of an idea of the actual full process without doing the actual full drawing as I would if I were doing, like say, a more finished drawing or a commission. This is just really an insight into the process. Okay, so because I've gone in with the charcoal pencil now, I can push willow charcoal down because it's very soft. I can push that around with a brush, as I did with a bristle brush earlier on, but now I'm going in with the charcoal pencil. It's a bit harder to push around, so I will have to go in with my tortillon just to blend that a bit. The chamois would work with this pencil to soften large areas, but if I want a bit more control, I'm going to have to go in with the blending stump. So, blending stump. Let's see if we can find a bit of a dirty edge, because I don't want to lift off too much of what I'm putting down here, because the blending stump will do that until it becomes dirty enough to not remove. Okay, so I still want to keep all these planes of the face, as we realised with the watercolour demonstration, are very rounded. We have very few hard edges in the shapes within the face. So we want to keep those soft edges for as long as we can until we get to the nearer the end stage of the piece, where we can start bringing in some slightly harder edges. Again, very important about how you use this stump here and the pressure you apply. You don't want to apply too much pressure, because you're just going to really push the charcoal too much into the paper surface. So if you decide that you want to erase out, lighten some areas, you're going to have a very hard time if you've just pushed everything too far in with this stump. Okay, so actually I might be okay with the brush here. I'm finding the stump a little bit too hard for the softness I want to maintain at this stage a little bit. So with the bristle brush, because it's nice and stiff, yeah, if I apply a bit more pressure, I can soften up that charcoal pencil. And clean up this edge a little bit where I've gone over with my blending the brush. Just tidy that edge up a little bit there, through here. I don't quite know where that marks come from. My mistake. Okay, so hopefully you're getting a sense here. I don't want to continue too much longer, because this is a very gradual process. It's just about working the surface, evaluating all your values. When you've gone, darker in a certain area, you might find the adjacent value needs to be adjusted somewhat. It might need to be darkened or perhaps lightened. So everything's relative, really, when you're drawing. But the main thing is we're trying to create a solid value structure so that we're describing form. And it's going to look three-dimensional and solid, and that's where the edges come into play and our correct evaluation of values. But you can see here all of the values in this shadow, the side of the face, are much darker than the values in the light side of the face. That's very important. These values always need to be lighter than any of the values. The lightest values in the shadow always have to be darker than any of our values in the light. And it's only then that this will read as a three-dimensional solid form, and the shadows will read as being in the side of the face, or on the side of the face that's not receiving light. I will carry on a little bit longer just to show you what fixing an area will do. Again here, all about kind of the pressure I'm putting on that brush. If I don't want to lift too much off, I don't apply too much pressure. If I want to lift more off, I'll apply a heavier pressure in that area. Just the same as painting. If we want to lay down a dense area of paint, we apply more pressure. If we want it to be subtler and lighter, then we apply less pressure. Okay, so I carry on working through in this manner, blending our edges, keeping everything soft until we get to our end stage, where I can then decide where I want to put my real darks to create emphasis, which are going to be generally in the eyes here. So I can go in and I can just start pressing very heavily here, just to really get those darks indicated. Sharp, hard-edged darks. So let's just switch to my stick of compressed charcoal. Just going to go in up here and just be quite expressive with some marks just for the dark area of the hair, because it is black. So I'm just being quite expressive there. I can put some around here, around the ear. Okay, again, I can't quite get in because this is a stand that my iPad's on, so I am very cramped at the minute, so you'll have to forgive that, folks. But again, I just hope that you get a sense and idea of the process here. Apologies for the helicopter again. That is going to be a common feature of all of my videos, sadly. As I said, I live right next to Boscombe Airfield, so that will be a constant problem, unfortunately. So you can see here, just nice and loose, expressive, bring out some kind of gestural strokes in the hair. This is where we want to have fun and be a bit more abstract and expressive, with a bit more control reserved for the face and the portrait itself. So this little edge here is what we call reflected light. So this is basically light bouncing back into the shadow from objects surrounding the figure, the environment. So it's bouncing off objects in the environment and light's bouncing back into the shadow. Always want to make sure you don't go too light with this. This reflected light still needs to be darker than any of the values in the illuminated side. Otherwise it's going to read instead as a second light source, as if there were a light up here, a second light source. So we'd have maybe a major light source over here and a second light source here, which will be creating a rim light around here. So we want to always make sure, if this is our primary light source and this is just reflected environmental light, that is darker than anything on the lit side. Okay. the brush I'm using here, this bristle brush, is a bit too large really for what I'm trying to do. It's quite a small portrait, it's only A4 size, so I want this bristle brush really, ideally to have been a lot smaller, to give me a bit more control. But again, it's just what I had to hand in the studio immediately, so it's what I'm using. So I'm going to abandon my reference now because it's really a bit too much in the way. Put that down there. So trying to do this a bit from memory now. I don't advise you do that. Try to get this up to some kind of conclusion. Go back with the willow again. So it's a constant going back and forth with your softer charcoals and your heavier, your darker, more dense charcoal. Just kind of refining and reworking where you need to. You will find sometimes with willow charcoal you'll have a bit of a hard bit in there, so you just need to move that charcoal tip around a little bit to start getting that working again. So I'll get a little bit of a background in here. Yeah, because I peeled off this sheet of paper and I'm working on my drawing board. It's an old cutting mat I've got underneath, so you can see it's kind of not ideal there. It's this is again picking up what's underneath. So if you're going to tear off a sheet of paper, I suggest having another few sheets of paper underneath it so you have a much smoother surface to work on. There we go, so we got a little bit of a background in here, and I can, again, just the same way as I did with everywhere else, just soften everything off. Some areas you might want to preserve some texture for a bit of visual interest, but I do prefer a slightly softer look to the overall piece in the big broad areas, and certainly the areas that are not my focal point. I want that kind of softness. Give it a bit of a frame. Again, back in with the compressed charcoal. where the edge where the hair meets the face, always try to kind of soften that transition as well. If it's too sharp and harder transition, it looks more like the hair's been cut out and stuck on, really. So we want to make sure that everything integrates well with everything else and sits well. Okay. Just soften that. So just the white of that eye there looked a little bit too white, so I just apply a bit more value over it. And reflected light here again is becoming too bright, too white, reading as a second light source, so I'll go in and just fill that in a little bit more. So it's just, again, just a constant kind of back and forth. When you get enough charcoal down, you can start really pushing it around a bit like paint, which is the beauty of it, and that makes it the most painterly of all the drawing mediums, really. Charcoal and soft pastel and oil pastel. We can really start pushing those around. So there's a highlight in the other eye, but it's not as bright as the one on the lit side. So let me just see if I can lift out just a little spot there. Just shaping my putty rubber. So I've popped that highlight in that side of the face now. That side of the face and the eye. And you can see it's not as bright as this lovely white sharp highlight over here, so this becomes our focal area really of the portrait. This side is in shadow, so it's kind of lesser importance. And then I've used the brush for big general broad areas of my blending, but when I get down to the final stages of the piece, I'd switch to the Tortillon and really go in and control much more. So everything starts out very general and broad and becomes a lot tighter as you progress. but it should always start out loose and broad. You don't want to go too tight too soon. Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good place to end this, because there's some strange noises coming from outside my flat now. I think there's someone building something. The noise is getting louder, so something is approaching. Some vehicle of some sort, construction vehicle. So I think we'll call it a day just there. Okay, so I hope that's given you an insight into one of the two processes. Again, I will do the other one for you for a later assignment. I think this is enough for you guys to have a play with, have a think about, try to get to grips with the technique here. It's a very good, a nice painterly technique, particularly with the using the brushes to control where the charcoal is going and how soft we're making it, and we can kind of be painterly with our strokes when we're putting it down, as you see here. So yeah. I wish you all the best of luck with this one, folks, and apologies if it's overrun again. I tried. I think an hour's not too long of length of time for the video, so certainly a demonstration process like this. So I'll try to keep them certainly under an hour, unless for any reason I really want you guys to see a full painting process, and they'll be kind of quite more event videos of just me painting, and you guys just being able to watch and see how I normally work through a process to a more finished degree. Okay, so there we are, folks. Good luck, and I shall see you for Oh, actually, before I go, I have received some work back from the previous week's assignment. There's some great work come back. So what I'm going to be doing now with marking is I will pop all those that I've received back onto my iPad, and I'll scroll through those and mark everybody's on video. So you'll see me also commenting on other submissions I've had back, which I think is beneficial for everybody to see kind of my comments on other people's work, because it might kind of answer a few questions you might have had about certain things in your own work. Okay, so yeah, so there we are. Oh, terrible! I can rarely put things down when I get started. Okay, all right, folks. Good luck and take care. Speak to you soon. Bye bye.